Your father has been calling every 5 minutes since dawn. The Volkov's lawyer showed up an hour ago demanding their release, and the police want statements from both of us about the video. The police. Elena's blood ran cold. Adrian, if they investigate, they'll find enough evidence to bury the Volkovs and your sister, but nothing that leads back to my legitimate business operations. Adrian's smile was sharp. I'm very good at keeping my legal and illegal enterprises separate. That's why I've never been indicted. And the wedding? The forced marriage? As far as anyone knows, we're madly in love. Star-crossed lovers reunited despite the odds. Adrian's expression hardened. Your father approached me with the marriage proposal. You agreed to save your brother. It's all very romantic when you leave out the parts about coercion and revenge. Elena sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. This is insane. All of it. Welcome to my world. Adrian sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his body heat. But you handled yourself well last night. The way you exposed Olivia, the way you stood up to the Volkovs, that took guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. He paused. Elena, about what your sister said. About your mother. I don't want to talk about it. The words came out sharper than intended. Whether I'm Richard Voss's biological daughter or not, doesn't change anything. He raised me. He used me. And now he's dealing with the consequences. Adrian's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen and swore under his breath. It's Marcus. The situation with the Volkovs is escalating. Their lawyer is threatening to go to the press about their unlawful detention. Then let them go. Elena stood, decision crystallizing. We have the evidence. Let the legal system handle it. The legal system is slow and corrupt, and half the judges in this city are on the Volkov's payroll. Adrian rose as well, frustration bleeding into his voice. If we release them now, they'll disappear, flee the country. We'll never get justice. And if we hold them, we're no better than they are. Elena moved closer, placing her hand on his chest. Adrian, I know you want revenge. I want it too. But we have to be smart about this. If we play this wrong, we become the villains in the story. He stared down at her, jaw tight with tension. Then, slowly, he nodded. Fine. We'll release them to police custody, but I'm posting guards at every exit point in the city. If they try to run, we'll know. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Adrian's hand came up to cup her cheek. This is far from over. His touch sent electricity through her veins, and for a moment, Elena forgot how to breathe. They were standing too close, the air between them charged with everything unspoken. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she saw him lean in. The door burst open. Boss, we've got a situation. Marcus stood in the doorway, tactfully ignoring their proximity. Olivia Voss just held a press conference. Adrian and Elena exchanged glances before following Marcus to the security center, a room filled with monitors showing feeds from cameras positioned throughout the estate and at key locations across the city. One of the largest screens displayed a live news feed. Olivia stood on the steps of Voss Industries headquarters, looking immaculate in a powder blue suit, her hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. She looked nothing like a woman who'd been exposed as a murderer just hours ago. She looked like a victim. I want to address the shocking video that's been circulating online, Olivia said, voice trembling with just the right amount of emotion. That footage is completely fabricated. It's been doctored by people who want to destroy my family and take over Voss Industries. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. My stepsister Elena has been involved with the Moretti crime family for years. When I discovered evidence of her criminal activities, she decided to frame me for the terrible tragedy that befell the Moretti family 3 years ago. That lying bitch, Elena breathed. The video shows someone who looks like me meeting with Viktor Volkov, but forensic experts have already confirmed that it's been digitally altered. Olivia looked directly into the camera, and Elena could see the calculation behind those tear-filled eyes. I'm cooperating fully with law enforcement to bring the real criminals to justice. My father and I are devastated by these false accusations, and we ask for privacy during this difficult time. Questions erupted from the assembled reporters, but Olivia simply waved and retreated into the building, flanked by security and lawyers. She's good, Marcus observed grimly. I'll give her that. She's a psychopath, Adrian corrected. Elena, we need to respond. Now, before her narrative takes hold. But Elena was already thinking 3 steps ahead. No, we don't respond. Not yet. What? She's expecting us to fight back immediately, to release more evidence, to go tit for tat in the media. Elena paced the room, mind racing. But that just makes us look defensive, like we're scrambling. So what do you suggest? Elena turned to Marcus. You said the police want statements. Set it up. Official statements to the authorities, not to the press. We cooperate fully with the investigation and let the evidence speak for itself. Adrian's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. And while the investigation is ongoing, we focus on cutting off Olivia's support system, her allies, her resources. Exactly. Elena felt the pieces clicking into place. She's relying on the fact that she still has access to Voss Industries' money and connections. But what if she didn't? Your father controls the company. My father is weak. The words tasted bitter, but true. He spent his whole life being manipulated by stronger personalities. First my mother, then Olivia, now the Volkovs. But he also values his reputation above everything else. Elena smiled slowly. And right now, his reputation is tied to Olivia's. If we can convince him that cutting her off is the only way to save face, he'll throw her to the wolves. Adrian's expression shifted to something like admiration. You really are your father's daughter. No, Elena said quietly. I'm my mother's daughter. And she taught me that sometimes survival means making impossible choices. Before Adrian could respond, one of the security monitors flashed red. Marcus swore and pulled up the feed, revealing a sleek black car pulling up to the estate gates. Who is that? Elena asked. Marcus zoomed in on the license plate and his expression darkened. Senator Morrison. He's on the Volkov's payroll. Has been for years. What does he want? Nothing good. Adrian was already moving toward the door. Marcus, get Elena somewhere safe. No. Elena grabbed his arm. If this involves the Volkovs, it involves me too. I'm not hiding. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Fine, but you stay behind me, and if things go south, you run. Understood? Understood. They met Senator Morrison in the formal receiving room, a space designed to intimidate with its soaring ceilings and antique furnishings. The senator was in his 50s, silver-haired and distinguished-looking, with the kind of practiced smile that probably won him elections but set Elena's teeth on edge. Mr. Moretti, Mrs. Moretti. He nodded to each of them in turn. Congratulations on your marriage. I'm sorry I couldn't attend the ceremony. You weren't invited, Adrian said flatly. What do you want, Morrison? Straight to business. I appreciate that. The senator settled into a chair without being invited, crossing his legs casually. I'm here on behalf of several concerned parties who believe this situation with the Volkov family has gotten out of hand. Concerned parties, Elena repeated. You mean the people the Volkovs have bought off over the years? Morrison's smile didn't waver. I mean respected members of the business community who are worried about the instability your accusations have caused. The Volkovs are prepared to make this all go away. Drop the charges, issue a public statement saying there was a misunderstanding, and they'll ensure your brother is released unharmed. Marco is already safe, Elena said. He's upstairs having breakfast. The senator's smile finally slipped. I see. Then perhaps we can discuss other incentives. The Volkovs are willing to offer substantial financial compensation for the damage to the Moretti family reputation. My family is dead, Adrian interrupted, voice like ice. There's no amount of money that compensates for that. Then what about testimony? Morrison leaned forward. The Volkovs have information about your operations, shipping routes, money laundering schemes, offshore accounts. They're willing to keep that information private in exchange for your cooperation. So they're threatening to expose my criminal activities unless I let them walk away from murder. Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell me, Senator, how much did they pay you to deliver this message? Was it worth your integrity? Morrison's face flushed. I'm trying to help you avoid a very public, very messy legal battle that neither side will win. No, Elena said, standing up. You're trying to help the Volkovs avoid consequences for their actions. There's a difference. Mrs. Moretti, you are young and perhaps don't understand how these things work. I understand perfectly. Elena's voice could have cut glass. I understand that you're here because the Volkovs are panicking, because for the first time in their lives, they might actually face justice. And I understand that you're hoping we'll take a deal because you're terrified of what will come out during a trial. Morrison stood as well, abandoning all pretense of friendliness. You're making a mistake. The Volkovs have connections you can't imagine, resources you can't match. If you insist on pursuing this, they will destroy you. They can try. Adrian moved to stand beside Elena, presenting a united front. Now get out of my house before I have you arrested for obstruction of justice. You'll regret this, Morrison warned, heading for the door. Both of you. After he left, Elena sank back into her chair, adrenaline making her hands shake. That was a threat. That was a declaration of war. Adrian pulled out his phone. Marcus, I want eyes on Senator Morrison 24/7, and get me everything you can find on his financial records. If the Volkovs paid him off, I want proof. On it, boss. Adrian ended the call and turned to Elena. You should know that what you just did, standing up to Morrison, refusing to back down, that made us a target. The Volkovs won't stop at threats. They'll escalate. Good. Elena met his eyes steadily. I want them to escalate. I want them angry and desperate and making mistakes, because that's when we'll destroy them. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, respect mixing with something darker, more primal. You've changed. You have no idea. The rest of the day passed in a blur of lawyers and police statements and security briefings. Elena gave her official statement to a detective who looked skeptical of everything she said until she walked him through the evidence step by step. The detective's skepticism turned to genuine shock when he realized the scope of the conspiracy. This is going to be the case of the decade, he muttered, taking notes furiously. The Volkovs, the Voss family, political corruption. Jesus Christ, this goes deep. That's why we need your help, Elena said. We need someone we can trust in law enforcement. You can trust me. Detective James Chen looked up from his notes, expression serious. But you need to understand that this investigation is going to take time, months, maybe years, and the people involved have the resources to drag it out even longer. We understand, Adrian said. We're prepared for a long fight. After Detective Chen left, Elena found Marco in the estate library, looking lost among the towering shelves of books. Her brother had always been more comfortable with computers than classical literature, and seeing him surrounded by leather-bound volumes would have been funny under different circumstances. Hey, she said softly. Marco turned, and the relief on his face made her chest ache. Elena, I've been looking for you. They said you were busy with the police? Just giving my statement. She moved to hug him, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. Are you okay? They didn't hurt you? I'm fine. Bored, mostly. They kept me locked in a guest room with cable TV and room service. Marco pulled back, studying her face. But what about you? This whole marriage thing, the video of Olivia. What the hell is going on? Elena guided him to a leather couch and spent the next 20 minutes explaining everything. Her brother's expression cycled through shock, horror, anger, and finally a cold fury that reminded her unnervingly of Adrian. I'll kill her, Marco said when she finished. I'll kill Olivia myself for what she did to you. No, you won't. Elena grabbed his hand. Because that makes you just like them. And you're better than that. She framed you for murder, Elena. She destroyed your life. And now I'm going to destroy hers. Legally, publicly, completely. Elena's grip tightened. But I need you to stay out of it. Go back to Boston. Finish your degree. Live your life. Are you insane? Marco stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're my sister. You saved my life. I'm not abandoning you now. You're not abandoning me. You're staying safe. Safe is boring. Marco's grin was fierce and reckless. Besides, I've got skills you need. I can hack into databases, track digital footprints, find information people want buried. Let me help. Elena wanted to say no. Wanted to protect her baby brother from the darkness she was wading into. But she also knew that look in his eyes, the stubborn determination that had gotten him through MIT at age 21. Fine, she said finally, but you follow my rules. No unnecessary risks, no cowboy heroics. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Marco's expression sobered. Elena, are you sure about this? About Adrian? Because from where I'm sitting, this whole situation looks complicated, Elena supplied. toxic as hell. She couldn't argue with that. Adrian and I have history, bad history. But right now, we have the same enemies. That makes us allies. And when those enemies are gone, what happens then? Elena didn't have an answer for that. That evening, Adrian's estate hosted a very different kind of gathering. Not a wedding celebration, but a war council. The dining room had been converted into a strategy center, with maps and documents spread across the long table. Besides Elena, Adrian, and Marcus, there were 3 other people present. Natalie Chen sat at one end of the table with 2 laptops open, fingers flying across the keyboards. "I've been digging into Voss Industries' financials," she said without looking up. "Olivia's been siphoning money for years. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, the works. She's got about 40 million stashed away that your father doesn't know about." "Can we freeze those accounts?" Elena asked. "Already working on it." Natalie's smile was sharp. "She'll wake up tomorrow significantly poorer." Across from Natalie sat a woman in her 40s with iron gray hair and sharp green eyes. Catherine Blake had been the Moretti family's lawyer for 20 years, and according to Adrian, she'd never lost a case that mattered. "The challenge we're facing," Catherine said, "is that Olivia's team is already working to suppress the evidence. They're filing motions to exclude the video footage, claiming it's been obtained illegally and doctored. They're arguing that even if the footage is real, it doesn't prove Olivia's direct involvement in the fire." "But the audio," Elena started, "can be challenged as manipulated or taken out of context." Catherine's expression was sympathetic but realistic. "I'm not saying we can't win, but it's going to be a fight, and Olivia has excellent lawyers." The last person at the table was someone Elena had only met that afternoon, a wiry man in his 60s named Thomas Graves, who ran the largest private investigation firm in the city. His reputation was legendary, and his rates were astronomical. "I've been looking into the Volkov family's operations," Thomas said, pulling up documents on a tablet. "They're more vulnerable than they appear. Dmitri's been having health problems, heart condition. He's been in and out of hospitals for the last 6 months, which means Victor and Alexei have been running day-to-day operations. And those 2 hate each other." "How much do they hate each other?" Adrian asked. "Enough that Victor's been meeting with a breakaway faction of the Bratva that wants to overthrow Dmitri." Thomas showed them surveillance photos. "If we play this right, we can turn the Volkov family against itself." Elena studied the photos, mind racing. What if we let it leak that Victor was planning to betray his father, that the whole scheme with Olivia was part of his plan to take over the family? "Dmitri would lose his mind," Marcus said. "He's old school, loyal to family above everything. If he thought Victor was plotting against him, he'd cut him off, disown him, maybe worse." Adrian's smile was cold. "I like it." "There's one problem," Thomas said. "We'd need proof, real proof, not just rumors. Otherwise, Victor can deny it, and Dmitri won't believe us." "What if we created proof?" Natalie looked up from her laptops. "I could doctor financial records showing Victor moving money into accounts Dmitri doesn't know about. Set up email exchanges that make it look like he's been planning a coup." "That's illegal," Catherine pointed out. "And if it's discovered, it could undermine our entire case." "Not if it leads to real evidence," Elena said slowly. "We don't use the fake proof in court. We use it to make Dmitri suspicious, and when he starts digging into Victor's activities, he'll find all the real crimes his son has committed." Catherine considered this. "It's risky. If it backfires—" "Everything we're doing is risky," Adrian interrupted. "The question is whether the reward is worth it." They spent the next 3 hours refining the plan. Natalie would create the false financial trail. Thomas would arrange for the information to reach Dmitri through a source he'd trust. And once the Volkov family started tearing itself apart from the inside, Adrian and Elena would be there to pick up the pieces. It was ruthless, manipulative, exactly the kind of scheme Elena would have been horrified by a week ago. Now it felt like justice. As the meeting broke up and people started to leave, Elena found herself alone with Adrian in the dining room. They stood on opposite sides of the table, the evidence of their conspiracy spread between them. "You're good at this," Adrian said quietly. "Strategy, manipulation, revenge. You're a natural." "I had a good teacher." Elena met his eyes. "You. I never taught you anything. You showed me what happens when you trust the wrong people, when you believe in love more than survival." She moved around the table toward him. 3 years ago, I would have done anything for you. I would have sacrificed everything. And you know what that got me? Betrayal. Hatred. A wedding that felt like a funeral. Adrian flinched. Elena, but I'm grateful for it now. She stopped a foot away from him, close enough to see the pain in his eyes. Because it taught me that the only person I can rely on is myself. That love is just another weapon people use to control you. You don't believe that, don't I? Elena tilted her head, studying him like he was a particularly interesting puzzle. Tell me, Adrian, if you found out tomorrow that I was innocent, that I never betrayed you, that everything you believed about me for 3 years was a lie, would you forgive me? Yes, he said immediately. You're lying. I'm not. You are. Elena's smile was sad. Because even if you forgave me intellectually, emotionally, you'd never forget. You'd always wonder if I was playing you, if this was all just another scheme, and eventually that doubt would poison everything between us. She stepped back. So let's not pretend this is anything more than what it is. A temporary alliance between two people who used to care about each other. And what happens when the alliance is over? We go our separate ways. Elena forced herself to say it, even though the words felt like glass in her throat. You get your revenge. I get my freedom. We both get to move on with our lives. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, cupping her face in his hands with a desperation that stole her breath. And what if I don't want to move on? He asked, voice raw. What if I want... The door burst open. Again. Marcus stood there, phone in hand, face grim. Boss, we've got a problem. Olivia just announced a major press event for tomorrow afternoon. She's planning to reveal new evidence that proves the Moretti family has been running a criminal enterprise for decades. Adrian's hands dropped from Elena's face. What evidence? We don't know yet, but she's got the mayor, the police commissioner, and 3 senators attending. This isn't a press conference. It's a public execution. Elena felt ice spread through her veins. Olivia was going scorched earth. If she couldn't escape the accusations against her, she'd take everyone down with her. We need to stop her, she said. How? Marcus asked. She's holding the event at City Hall. Maximum publicity. Maximum protection. We can't exactly storm the building. No, Adrian said slowly, but we can beat her at her own game. He turned to Elena. How do you feel about giving a press conference of your own? Elena's heart hammered. What would I say? The truth. Adrian's smile was sharp and dangerous. All of it. Your father's manipulation, Olivia's crimes, the Volkovs' conspiracy, everything we've been holding back. We bury her in truth before she can bury us in lies. That's insane, Marcus protested. If Elena goes public like that, she becomes a target, not just from the Volkovs and Olivia, but from every 2-bit criminal who wants to make a name for themselves by taking out the woman who exposed the city's corruption. Then we make sure she's protected, Adrian said. Around-the-clock security, safe houses, whatever it takes. Adrian, this is my decision. Elena's voice cut through the argument. And I'm making it. We do the press conference. Tomorrow morning, before Olivia has a chance to control the narrative. She looked at Marcus. Can you set it up? Marcus exchanged glances with Adrian, then nodded reluctantly. I'll make the calls. After he left, Adrian turned to Elena. You know this changes everything, right? Once you go public, there's no taking it back. You'll be under a microscope. Every aspect of your life examined. Every word you say dissected. I know. And you're still willing to do it? Elena thought about everything she'd lost. Her innocence, her trust, her belief that the world was fundamentally fair, but she'd gained something too. Strength, clarity, the cold certainty that came from having nothing left to lose. I'm willing, she said, but on one condition. Name it. After this is over, after Olivia's in prison and the Volkovs are destroyed and we've won, you let me go. Elena forced herself to hold his gaze. No more forced marriage. No more using Marco as leverage. You give me my freedom and we go our separate ways. Deal? Something broke in Adrian's expression. Pain, raw and real, flashing across his face before he masked it. And if I don't want to let you go, then you're no better than they are. Elena's voice was quiet but firm. I won't trade one prison for another, Adrian, not even a gilded one. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then finally, he extended his hand. Deal. They shook on it, and Elena tried to ignore the way his touch still sent electricity through her veins, tried to ignore the voice in her head whispering that she was making a terrible mistake. Because the truth was, she didn't want to leave. Didn't want to walk away from Adrian, from the possibility of what they could be if they could just move past the pain. But she'd learned the hard way that what you wanted and what was good for you were often two very different things. And Elena Voss had spent too long sacrificing herself for love to make that mistake again. The press conference was scheduled for 9 in the morning at the historic Grandview Hotel. And by 8:30, the room was already packed with reporters. Elena watched them file in through a monitor in the green room backstage, her stomach a knot of nerves and determination. Camera crews jockeyed for position. Journalists checked their recording equipment. The energy in the room crackled with anticipation. "You don't have to do this," Adrian said from behind her. He'd been saying variations of the same thing for the last 2 hours, ever since she'd woken up at dawn to prepare. "We can find another way." "There is no other way." Elena turned to face him, smoothing down the navy dress Catherine had helped her choose. Professional, trustworthy, the kind of outfit that said she was telling the truth. "Olivia's press conference is in 4 hours. If we don't get ahead of this, we lose." Natalie looked up from her laptop where she'd been monitoring social media. "The hashtag is already trending. Claude Voss Speaks has over 200,000 mentions. Everyone wants to know what you're going to say." "No pressure," Marco muttered from his position by the door. He'd insisted on being there despite Elena's protests, and now he stood like a guard dog, watching everyone who came near his sister with suspicious eyes. Catherine entered, perfectly composed as always in a charcoal suit. "The police commissioner just arrived. So did 3 prosecutors from the DA's office. Whatever you say in there, you'll be saying it in front of people who can bring charges." "Good." Elena took a deep breath. "That's exactly what I want." "Elena." Adrian caught her hand, pulling her aside while the others pretended not to notice. "Once you walk through that door, everything changes. They'll tear you apart looking for inconsistencies. They'll question every word, every motive. Are you ready for that?" She looked up at him, at the concern etched in his features, and felt something crack in her chest. For just a moment, she let herself imagine a different world, one where they'd never been torn apart, where she could lean into his strength and let him protect her from what was coming. But that wasn't this world. "I'm ready," she said quietly. "I've been ready for 3 years." Adrian's jaw tightened, and for a moment Elena thought he might argue. Instead, he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent heat racing through her veins. "Then go show them what you're made of, Mrs. Moretti." The name should have felt like chains. Instead, in that moment, it felt like armor. Marcus appeared in the doorway. "We're live in 2 minutes. Elena, you're on." She walked through the door into a wall of sound, camera shutters clicking like mechanical heartbeats, reporters shouting questions over each other, the hot glare of television lights washing everything in stark white illumination. Elena made her way to the podium, and gradually the noise died down to expectant silence. For a moment, she just stood there, looking out at the sea of faces, some curious, some skeptical, some already hostile, having decided she was guilty before she'd spoken a word. Then she began. "My name is Elena Voss Moretti, and 3 years ago, I was framed for a crime I didn't commit." Her voice was steady, clear, carrying to every corner of the room. "The fire that killed Adrian Moretti's parents and sister was set by my stepsister, Olivia Voss, in collaboration with the Volkov crime family. I have evidence, I have testimony, and today, I'm going to show you everything." The room erupted again, but Elena raised her hand and somehow, impossibly, they quieted. "I know many of you have seen the video that went viral 2 days ago. The footage showing Olivia meeting with Viktor Volkov, planning the fire, arranging my downfall." Elena gripped the edges of the podium. "But what you don't know is why. Why would my own stepsister destroy innocent lives? Why would she frame me for murder?" She nodded to Natalie, who triggered the presentation on the screen behind her. Financial records appeared, stark black numbers on white background. "Money," Elena said simply. "Olivia has been embezzling from Voss Industries for years, over $40 million hidden in offshore accounts and shell corporations. She's been selling company secrets to the Volkovs in exchange for cash and promises of power. And when she realized that my father might discover what she'd done, she decided to create a distraction big enough to bury her crimes. The screen changed to show the original footage from the night of the fire, but this time with enhanced clarity and additional angles that Natalie had recovered from backup servers. This is Olivia Voss on the night of March 15th, 3 years ago. Elena's voice didn't waver even as she watched her stepsister commit murder in high definition. She's carrying accelerant. She's meeting with Viktor Volkov. And at 11:47 p.m., she set fire to the Moretti family home while they slept. A reporter in the front row raised her hand. But the police report from that night says you were seen at a hotel with Antonio De Luca, Adrian Moretti's business rival. How do you explain that? I was drugged. Elena met the reporter's eyes. Someone slipped something into my drink at a charity event earlier that evening. I have no memory of how I got to that hotel room. But I do have this. The screen changed again, showing medical records. I went to the hospital the next morning when I woke up confused and sick. My blood work showed traces of Rohypnol and ketamine, enough to knock out someone my size for hours. She paused. Those hospital records were sealed by court order 3 years ago. My father's lawyers made sure they never saw the light of day. Because if anyone knew I'd been drugged, it would raise questions about the photographs, about the timeline, about whether I could have possibly set that fire. Why are you coming forward now? Another reporter called out. Because 2 days ago, I was forced to marry Adrian Moretti to save my brother's life. The words fell like bombs into the silence. My father made a deal with the Moretti family. He'd give them me in exchange for business advantages and political protection. I had no choice. It was marriage or my brother's death. The room exploded with noise. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but Elena kept talking, her voice cutting through the chaos. But what my father didn't know was that his precious daughter Olivia had been planning his downfall too. She's been negotiating with the Volkovs to merge Voss Industries with their criminal empire. Once that merger goes through, my father loses control of the company he built. He becomes a figurehead while Olivia and the Volkovs gut everything he created. She pulled out a thick folder and held it up. I have contracts, emails, financial projections, all of it proving that Olivia Voss and the Volkov family have been conspiring to commit fraud, money laundering, racketeering, and murder. And I'm turning all of it over to the authorities today. Elena set the folder on the podium. I know some of you are wondering why you should believe me. Why you should trust a woman who married into a crime family, who comes from a corrupt empire herself. And you're right to be skeptical. But I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you to look at the evidence, to follow the money, to hold everyone involved accountable. She gripped the podium harder, knuckles white. For 3 years, I've been called a murderer, a traitor, a whore. I've been cut off from my family, isolated from my friends, branded as a monster by people who didn't know the truth. And I accepted that because I thought fighting back would only make things worse. Her voice cracked, just slightly. But I'm done accepting. I'm done being silent. And I'm done letting the people who destroyed my life walk free while I carry the weight of their crimes. Elena looked directly into the camera, knowing that somewhere Olivia was watching. My stepsister is holding a press conference later today where she plans to release more fabricated evidence, more lies designed to bury the truth. Don't let her. Demand real proof. Demand verified sources. Demand the kind of evidence I'm providing right now. She stepped back from the podium. I'll take questions. The next 45 minutes were brutal. Reporters grilled her on every detail, looking for inconsistencies, demanding clarification, pushing her to admit she was lying or exaggerating or seeking revenge. But Elena stood her ground. She answered every question with facts, with documentation, with a calm certainty that gradually began to shift the mood in the room. When a particularly aggressive reporter suggested she was making everything up to save her own reputation, Elena simply pulled out her phone and played a recording. Olivia's voice filled the room. Father's going to be devastated when he finds out Elena's been stealing from the company. Of course, by the time he discovers it's actually me, I'll have enough leverage to force him out. Poor thing. He really should have paid more attention to his daughters. The recording was dated 6 months ago. In the background, Viktor Volkov's laugh was clearly audible. Where did you get that, the reporter demanded. From my stepsister's own phone. Elena smiled coldly. She's not very good at digital security, or maybe she just never imagined anyone would have the guts to stand up to her. By the time the press conference ended, the narrative had shifted. The narrative had... Elena could see it in the reporters' faces, in the way they looked at her with something approaching respect instead of suspicion. She'd given them the story of the decade, complete with villains and victims and enough evidence to fuel investigations for years. Catherine was waiting backstage with a grim smile. The DA's office wants to meet with you this afternoon. They're talking about immunity in exchange for your full cooperation. Immunity from what? Elena asked. I haven't done anything illegal. That's not entirely true. Catherine pulled her aside, voice low. You hacked into your sister's phone. You released sealed medical records. You've been working with Adrian Moretti, who, regardless of whether we can prove it in court, runs a criminal enterprise. The DA can make your life very difficult if they choose to. Then what do you recommend? Take the meeting. Listen to what they offer. Don't commit to anything without my advice. Catherine's expression softened slightly. But, Elena, you did well in there, really well. You might have just changed the course of this entire case. Adrian was waiting in the car outside, Marcus at the wheel. Elena slid into the back seat beside him, suddenly exhausted now that the adrenaline was fading. You were magnificent, Adrian said quietly. I was terrified. I know. His hand found hers in the space between them. But you didn't let them see it. That's what matters. Elena's phone started buzzing with messages, reporters requesting follow-up interviews, strangers offering support, and then one that made her blood run cold. From Olivia, you're going to regret that, I promise you. She showed it to Adrian, whose expression darkened. Marcus, double the security detail. I want someone on Elena every second. Already done, boss. And find out where Olivia is right now. I want to know who she's talking to, where she's going, what she's planning. They drove back to the estate in tense silence, Elena watching the city pass by through tinted windows. Somewhere out there, Olivia was regrouping, planning her counterattack, and the Volkovs were watching, waiting for an opportunity to strike. When they arrived, Marco was waiting at the door with his laptop. You need to see this. He pulled up a news site where Olivia's scheduled press conference had been canceled. In its place was a brief statement from Voss Industries' legal team. Due to ongoing legal proceedings, Ms. Olivia Voss will not be making any public statements at this time. She maintains her innocence and looks forward to clearing her name through the proper channels. She's running scared, Natalie said from behind Marco. Good. Means we're winning. But Elena wasn't so sure. Olivia didn't scare easily. If she'd canceled the press conference, it meant she was changing tactics, preparing something worse. The call came at 2 in the afternoon. Richard Voss wanted to meet with his daughter. Elena stared at her phone, at her father's name on the screen, and felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a cold emptiness where family loyalty used to live. It's a trap, Adrian said immediately. Probably. Elena set the phone down. But I'm going anyway. Elena, he's still my father. The words tasted like ash. Even if he's a terrible one, even if he used me and manipulated me and sold me to you like property, I need to look him in the eye and hear what he has to say. Then I'm coming with you. No. Elena's voice was firm. This is something I need to do alone. They argued for another 20 minutes before Adrian finally, reluctantly, agreed to let her go, but only with Marcus and 2 other guards waiting outside, only with a GPS tracker hidden in her jewelry. Only after she promised to leave at the first sign of danger. The meeting was set for a restaurant in the financial district. Neutral ground, public enough to be safe. When Elena arrived, she found her father sitting at a corner table, looking smaller somehow than she remembered. Richard Voss had always seemed larger than life, but now he just looked old and defeated. Elena. He stood when she approached, but didn't try to hug her. Thank you for coming. She slid into the seat across from him without a word. I watched your press conference, he said after a long silence. It was very impressive, very thorough. Is that all you have to say? Richard flinched. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I made mistakes? He laughed bitterly. I'm 63 years old, Elena. I've built an empire from nothing. I've made deals with criminals and politicians and everyone in between. And through it all, I told myself I was doing it for my family, for my daughters. You don't get to call us both your daughters anymore, Elena said coldly. Not after what Olivia did. She's sick. Richard's voice cracked. She needs help, not prison. She's a murderer who killed 3 innocent people and framed me for it. She needs to pay for what she's done. And what about you? Richard leaned forward, desperation bleeding into his voice. You married Adrian Moretti. You're working with a crime family. How is that any better than what Olivia did? Because I didn't have a choice. Elena's control finally slipped, voice rising. You gave me to him. You traded me like livestock to save your own skin. And now you want to act like you're the victim in all this? I was trying to protect you. By forcing me to marry a man who hated me? By letting everyone believe I was a murderer? That's protection? Richard slumped back in his chair. What was I supposed to do? The Volkovs had evidence against me. Real evidence of money laundering, tax fraud, illegal dealings going back decades. They said they'd bury me unless I gave them leverage over the Moretti family, and the only leverage I had was you. Elena felt something twist in her chest. So you sold me out to save yourself. I sold you out to save the company, to save the thousands of people who depend on Voss Industries for their livelihoods. Richard's eyes were pleading. I thought Adrian would keep you safe. I thought maybe eventually you two could work things out, considering your history. He thought I murdered his family. And now he knows the truth. Now you're working together. Richard reached across the table, but Elena pulled her hand back before he could touch her. Elena, please. Help me convince Olivia to turn herself in. Help me salvage what's left of our family. We're not a family. The words came out flat, emotionless. We're strangers bound by blood and betrayal. Nothing more. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Elena stood, gathering her purse. Olivia made her choices. You made yours. And now you both have to live with the consequences. And what about your choices? Richard's voice turned sharp. You chose to stay with Adrian Moretti. You chose to marry him, to work with him, to become part of his world. What does that make you? Elena paused at the door, looking back at the man who'd raised her. Someone who's done sacrificing herself for people who don't deserve it. She walked out without looking back. Marcus was waiting by the car, expression grim. Everything okay? Fine. Elena slid into the back seat, her hands shaking now that she was alone. Take me back to the estate. They were 3 blocks away when the first gunshot shattered the rear window. Marcus swore and floored the accelerator while the other security car moved to block the vehicle behind them. Elena dropped to the floor as another shot rang out, this one punching through the reinforced door panel inches from where her head had been. Stay down! Marcus shouted, swerving through traffic while calling for backup on his headset. We've got a black SUV, 3 shooters, coming up on our 6. The impact came from the side, a larger vehicle slamming into them with enough force to send their car spinning. Elena's head cracked against something hard and the world went fuzzy around the edges. She tasted blood. Then hands were grabbing her, pulling her from the wreckage. She fought, kicking and scratching, but whoever had her was strong. She caught a glimpse of Marcus slumped over the steering wheel, blood streaming down his face, before a hood was yanked over her head. Get her to the boat, a voice commanded in Russian-accented English. The boss wants her alive. Terror flooded through Elena's veins. She tried to scream, but someone pressed something over her mouth and nose. Chemical sweetness filled her lungs. Her limbs went heavy, unresponsive. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was the sound of sirens in the distance, arriving too late. When Elena woke, she was in hell. Not literally, though the pounding in her head and the burning in her lungs made it feel close enough. She was tied to a chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse, rust-stained walls and broken windows letting in weak afternoon light. Her mouth was dry as sand, and her vision kept swimming in and out of focus. Ah, she's awake. Viktor Volkov stepped into her line of sight, looking pleased with himself. His face was bruised from where Adrian had hit him at the wedding, purple and yellow mottling his jaw. Good, I was getting bored. Elena tried to speak, but her tongue felt thick and clumsy. Whatever they drugged her with was still in her system. Don't bother trying to talk. The sedatives take a while to wear off. Victor circled her like a predator. You've caused me a great deal of trouble, Mrs. Moretti. That press conference of yours has made my family's life very difficult. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. But you're going to fix that. You're going to go on camera and admit that you lied, that the evidence was fabricated, that you were working with Adrian Moretti all along to frame my family for crimes we didn't commit. Elena jerked her head away from his grip, managing to rasp out 2 words. Go hell. Victor's smile turned ugly. I was hoping you'd say that. He nodded to someone behind her, and suddenly electricity shot through her body. She screamed, muscles seizing, every nerve ending on fire. When it stopped, she was gasping for breath, sweat pouring down her face. That's just the beginning, Victor said conversationally. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice. The door crashed open with a bang that made Elena's ears ring. Adrian stood there with a gun in each hand and murder in his eyes. Get away from my wife. Victor moved fast, pulling Elena's chair in front of him as a human shield. I don't think so, Moretti. You shoot, you hit her. Then I'll make sure my aim is perfect. Adrian's voice was deadly calm, but Elena could see the fury radiating off him in waves. Let her go, and I might let you live. You're in no position to negotiate. Victor pressed a knife to Elena's throat. She felt the blade bite into her skin, felt warm blood trickle down her neck. Drop the guns or I open her throat. For one horrible moment, Elena thought Adrian might actually do it, might sacrifice her to get to Victor. But then she saw his eyes, saw the calculation there, and understood. He was buying time. Okay. Adrian set the guns down slowly. Okay, you win. Just don't hurt her. That's better. Victor's grip on the knife relaxed slightly. Now kick them over here. Adrian did, but as the gun skittered across the concrete floor, Elena saw movement in the shadows behind Victor. Marcus, blood-soaked but alive, creeping up with his own weapon drawn. She needed to give him an opening. Elena let her body go limp, dead weight, in Victor's grip. He cursed and shifted to hold her up, and in that split second of distraction, Marcus fired. The shot caught Victor in the shoulder, spinning him around. The knife clattered from his hand. Adrian dove for the guns while Elena threw herself sideways, chair and all, getting out of the line of fire. More gunshots rang out as Volkov reinforcements flooded into the warehouse. Adrian and Marcus returned fire, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Elena struggled against the ropes binding her wrists, feeling them start to give way. Then she saw it. Victor, wounded but still mobile, crawling toward a detonator attached to the wall. Her blood went cold. Adrian, she screamed, the building's rigged. Adrian's head snapped around. He took in the situation in a single glance, then made the kind of split-second decision that separated the living from the dead. He grabbed Elena, chair and all, and ran for the nearest exit. Behind them, Victor hit the detonator. The explosion was massive, a wall of heat and sound that picked them up and threw them like dolls. Adrian twisted in mid-air, taking the impact on his back as they crashed through a rotting wooden door and into the alley beyond. They hit the ground hard. Elena felt something crack in her ribs, but she was alive. They were alive. Then she saw the blood. Adrian. Her voice came out strangled. Adrian, you're bleeding. He was, badly. A piece of shrapnel from the explosion had embedded itself in his side, just below his ribs. Blood was spreading across his shirt in a crimson stain that grew faster than it should. It's fine, he gasped, trying to sit up. We need to move. Don't you dare say it's fine. Elena finally got her hands free and immediately pressed them against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. You're not fine. You're... Her voice broke, because Adrian's face was going pale, his breathing shallow, and there was so much blood. Too much blood. Hey! His hand came up to cup her cheek, leaving a red smear. Look at me, Elena. Look at me. She met his eyes, and what she saw there made her heart stop. I need you to listen, Adrian said, voice getting weaker. Marcus got out before the explosion. He'll have called for backup. Ambulance should be here in minutes. But just in case, no. Elena shook her head frantically. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to make a goodbye speech. You're going to be fine. Just in case, he continued as if she hadn't spoken, I need you to know something. I never stopped loving you, even when I hated you, even when I thought you'd betrayed me. Some part of me always knew the truth. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now, mixing with the blood and soot. "Shut up. Save your strength." "I'm sorry." Adrian's eyes started to close. "For everything. For not trusting you. For forcing you to marry me. For not being strong enough to protect you from—" "Adrian, stay with me." Elena grabbed his face, forcing his eyes open. "You promised me freedom after this was over. You can't give me freedom if you're dead, so stay with me, damn it." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Elena kept pressure on the wound, kept talking to Adrian, kept trying to keep him conscious, but he was fading, his breathing getting more labored, his skin cold to the touch. "Elena," he whispered, so quiet she had to lean in to hear. "The safe in my office. Code is your birthday. Everything you need is in there. Proof of the Volkov's operations, offshore accounts, political connections. Finish what we started. We'll finish it together." Adrian smiled, and it was the saddest thing she'd ever seen. "You were always the strong one. I just made you believe you weren't." Then his eyes closed, and he went still. "No!" Elena screamed, shaking him. "No, no, no, Adrian, wake up, wake up!" Paramedics swarmed around them, pulling her away, starting compressions, shouting medical terms she didn't understand. Someone was asking her questions, but the words didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. All Elena could see was Adrian's blood on her hands. All she could hear was the flat line on the heart monitor. All she could feel was the world collapsing around her, taking everything she'd fought for down into the darkness. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Elena sat with Adrian's blood still on her hands, dried now to a rust-brown crust that cracked when she flexed her fingers. A nurse had offered to help her clean up, but Elena had refused. She needed to remember, needed to feel the weight of what had happened. Around her, the Moretti organization had gathered like wolves waiting for their alpha to either rise or fall. Men in expensive suits with hard eyes lined the walls, speaking in low voices, making calls, coordinating responses to the attack. Catherine was there with a team of lawyers, already preparing for the legal battles ahead. Marcus sat across from Elena with his head bandaged, jaw set in grim determination despite the concussion that had nearly killed him. And in the center of it all sat Elena, numb and hollow, staring at the double doors that separated her from the operating room where surgeons were fighting to save Adrian's life. "Mrs. Moretti." A doctor emerged, still in surgical scrubs, and the entire room went silent. "He's stable. The surgery was successful. We removed the shrapnel and repaired the damage to his liver and surrounding tissue, but he lost a significant amount of blood. The next 24 hours will be critical." Relief flooded through Elena so suddenly her knees buckled. Marcus caught her before she fell, his grip steady despite his own injuries. "Can I see him?" she asked, voice hoarse from screaming, from crying, from holding back the breakdown that threatened to consume her. "He's in recovery, still unconscious from the anesthesia. But yes, you can sit with him." The doctor's expression softened slightly. "He's a fighter, your husband. Most people wouldn't have survived those injuries." Elena followed a nurse through sterile corridors to a private room where Adrian lay surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. He looked smaller somehow in the hospital bed, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. An IV ran into his arm, bandages wrapped his torso. His face was pale against the white pillow. But he was alive. Elena sank into the chair beside his bed and finally let herself cry. Great, racking sobs that shook her whole body, releasing the terror and grief and rage she'd been holding back since the explosion. She cried for the 3 years they'd lost, for the pain they'd inflicted on each other, for the life they might have had if the world had been kinder. She cried until there were no tears left, until she was empty and exhausted and hollowed out. Then she reached out and took Adrian's hand, careful of the IV line, and made a silent promise. She would finish what they'd started. She would destroy everyone who'd hurt them, who'd torn them apart, who dared to touch what was hers. And she would do it without mercy. The door opened behind her. Elena turned to find Dmitry Volkov standing there with 2 bodyguards, looking every inch the crime lord despite his expensive suit and distinguished appearance. "How did you get in here?" Elena demanded, standing up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "I own half the hospital board." Dmitry's smile was cold. "Did you really think your husband's security could keep me out?" Elena's hand went to the call button, but Dmitri raised a hand. Please, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to make you an offer. I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Not even if it concerns your stepsister. Dmitri pulled an envelope from his jacket. Olivia Voss contacted me this morning. She's willing to testify against Victor in exchange for immunity and relocation. She's prepared to give prosecutors everything they need to dismantle what's left of my organization. Elena's blood ran cold. You're lying. I wish I were. Dmitri's expression was almost regretful. My son has always been ambitious, but I didn't realize how far he'd fallen until your press conference exposed his schemes. The fire, the conspiracy, using that foolish girl to frame you. He shook his head. Victor dishonored our family, and now your sister wants to finish what he started by destroying us completely. So why are you telling me this? Because I want to propose a truce. Dmitri set the envelope on the bedside table. That contains everything I know about Olivia's plans. Her location, her contacts, her escape route. In exchange, I want your testimony that Victor acted alone, that I knew nothing about the fire or the conspiracy against the Moretti family. Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. You want me to lie to protect you. I want you to help me save what's left of my family's honor. Dmitri's voice hardened. Victor is already in custody. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. But if Olivia testifies, if she drags my entire organization through the mud, innocent people will suffer, people who had nothing to do with my son's crimes. Innocent, Elena repeated. Is anyone in your organization actually innocent? Are you? Dmitri countered. You married into a crime family. You're using their resources, their connections, their methods. At what point do you stop being a victim and start being complicit? The words hit harder than they should have. Because he was right. Elena had been so focused on revenge, on justice, that she hadn't stopped to consider what she was becoming. The press conference, the manipulation, the willingness to destroy anyone who stood in her way. When had she crossed the line from survivor to predator? Think about it, Dmitri said, moving toward the door. You have 48 hours before Olivia meets with prosecutors. After that, the offer expires. He left, and Elena stared at the envelope like it was a snake that might bite. She knew she should burn it without looking, should refuse to even consider Dmitri's deal. But another part of her, the part that had learned to be ruthless, to be strategic, wanted to know what was inside. She was reaching for it when Adrian's hand tightened around hers. Don't. His voice was barely a whisper, raw from the breathing tube they'd removed after surgery. But his eyes were open, clear despite the pain medication, and fixed on her face. Adrian? Elena's throat closed up. You're awake. Don't make deals with him. Adrian's grip strengthened slightly. Whatever he's offering, it's poison. I know. Elena sat back down, bringing his hand to her cheek. I know, I don't know what to do anymore. Olivia's trying to cut a deal. The Volkovs want a truce. Your organization is looking to me for leadership while you're recovering, and Her voice broke. I'm so tired, Adrian. I'm tired of fighting, tired of being strong, tired of carrying all of this. Then put it down. Adrian's thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Let me carry it for a while. You almost died. But I didn't. He tried to sit up and immediately gasped in pain. Elena gently pushed him back down, adjusting his pillows. Don't move, you idiot. You just had emergency surgery. Don't tell me what to do, wife. But Adrian was smiling, that crooked half-smile that had always undone her defenses. I'm the boss, remember? Not while you're in a hospital bed, you're not. Elena smoothed the blanket over him with trembling hands. When Victor hit that detonator, when I saw you bleeding, she couldn't finish the sentence. I know. Adrian pulled her hand to his chest, over his heart, where she could feel it beating strong and steady. I felt the same way when I saw them taking you, when Marcus called and said you'd been kidnapped. His jaw tightened. I've never been that scared in my life. You came for me anyway. Of course I did. You're mine. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I don't care if you want a divorce after this is over. I don't care if you hate me. You're still mine, and I protect what's mine. Elena should have been angry at the possessiveness in his voice, should have bristled at being called his like property. Instead, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest. I don't hate you. she said quietly. You should. I know. Elena looked down at their joined hands. But I can't seem to manage it. Believe me, I've tried. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough with more than just pain. Elena, about what I said before I passed out. Don't. She cut him off. Don't apologize for it. Don't take it back. Just let it be what it was. A moment of honesty in the middle of chaos. And what if I meant it? Then we'll deal with that when you're not recovering from major surgery. Elena stood, needing distance before she said something she'd regret. Right now, you need to rest. And I need to figure out what we're doing about Olivia. She picked up the envelope Dmitri had left and tucked it into her purse. Adrian's eyes tracked the movement, but he didn't comment. He knew her well enough to know that arguing would only make her more determined. Be careful, was all he said. Always. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The information in Dmitri's envelope was comprehensive and damning. Olivia had been coordinating with federal prosecutors for weeks, building a case against the Volkov organization in exchange for witness protection and immunity from prosecution. She'd given them bank records, shipping manifests, recorded conversations, everything they needed to take down one of the city's most powerful crime families. But she'd also been careful. The prosecutors didn't know about her role in the fire, didn't know about the embezzlement from Voss Industries, didn't know she was a murderer hiding behind immunity agreements. Elena sat in Adrian's office at the estate, surrounded by the evidence of her stepsister's latest betrayal, and felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. This was it, the final battle, and only one of them would walk away. You're going to kill her, aren't you? Elena looked up to find Marco standing in the doorway, expression unreadable. No, she said. I'm going to do something worse. She pulled out her phone and made a call to Catherine. I need you to arrange a meeting with the federal prosecutors. Tell them I have information about their star witness that they need to hear. And Catherine, make sure the media knows about it. I want cameras there when I destroy her. Marco sat down across from his sister, studying her face. You've changed. People keep telling me that. I'm not sure it's a good thing. Marco's voice was gentle but concerned. 3 weeks ago, you would never have considered publicly destroying someone, even if they deserved it. Now you're planning it like it's a chess move. Maybe I'm finally playing the game the way it's meant to be played. Elena closed the folder with Olivia's information. She killed 3 people, Marco. She framed me for it. She tried to have me kidnapped and murdered. At what point do I get to stop being the bigger person and start fighting back? I'm not saying don't fight back. I'm saying be careful you don't become the thing you're fighting against. His words echoed what Dmitri had said, what Elena herself had been thinking in the quiet moments when she let herself feel instead of just act. I don't know how to do this any other way, she admitted. I don't know how to get justice without destroying everything in my path. Then maybe you need to redefine what justice looks like. Marco leaned forward. Olivia's going to prison. The Volkovs are finished. You and Adrian are alive. That's a win, Elena. You don't have to burn the world down to prove you've won. But that was the problem. Elena did want to burn it down. Wanted to watch everyone who'd hurt her suffer the way she'd suffered. And the realization that she'd become capable of that kind of cruelty terrified her. I'll think about it, she said finally, which was the best she could offer. The meeting with federal prosecutors was set for the following afternoon at the courthouse. Elena arrived with Catherine and a team of lawyers, all of them dressed for war in sharp suits and carrying briefcases full of evidence. The media presence was overwhelming. Cameras lined the courthouse steps, reporters shouting questions, the public fascinated by the ongoing saga of the Voss and Moretti families. Inside, they were led to a conference room where 3 prosecutors waited along with Olivia and her legal team. Elena's stepsister looked immaculate as always, blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She looked like the victim she was pretending to be. Until she saw Elena. Then her mask slipped for just a moment, fear flickering across her features before she smoothed it away. Ms. Voss, the lead prosecutor said, standing to shake Elena's hand, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I understand you have information regarding Miss Olivia Voss's credibility as a witness? I do. Elena set her briefcase on the table, extracting files and arranging them with deliberate precision. I have evidence that your star witness is a murderer, an embezzler, and a pathological liar who has been manipulating everyone in this room. Olivia's lawyer started to object, but the prosecutor held up a hand. Those are serious allegations. I hope you can back them up. I can. Elena pulled out the first document. These are financial records showing that Olivia Voss has been embezzling from Voss Industries for the last 6 years, over $43 million hidden in offshore accounts under shell company names. She slid the papers across the table. The prosecutor studied them, expressions growing more serious by the moment. These could be fabricated, Olivia said, voice tight. My stepsister has every reason to discredit me. They're not fabricated. They came from your own accountant. Elena pulled out another file. Dennis Morrison. He kept copies of everything because he was afraid you'd frame him if the embezzlement was discovered. He's willing to testify in exchange for immunity. Olivia's face went white. And here, Elena continued, pulling out more documents, are the sealed medical records from the night of the Moretti fire, showing that I was drugged with rohypnol and ketamine, making it physically impossible for me to have set that fire or to have been conscious for the photographs taken at the hotel. We've seen the video footage, the prosecutor started. The video footage shows Olivia setting the fire, but what you haven't seen is this. Elena pulled out a thumb drive and handed it to Catherine, who plugged it into her laptop and projected the contents onto the screen at the end of the room. New footage appeared, enhanced, cleaned up, with audio restored. It showed Olivia meeting with Viktor Volkov 3 days before the fire, discussing exactly how to frame Elena, how to drug her, where to take the photographs, who to bribe to make sure the evidence pointed in the right direction. That video was doctored, Olivia said desperately. It's been manipulated. Then explain this. Elena pulled out her phone and played the recording she'd shared at her press conference. Olivia's own voice, clear and unmistakable, discussing her plans to frame her father and take over the company. The room went silent. Ms. Voss, the lead prosecutor said slowly, I think we need to reevaluate your immunity agreement. No. Olivia stood up, knocking her chair backward. No, you can't do this. I gave you everything on the Volkovs. I'm cooperating. You're a murderer trying to hide behind witness protection. Elena's voice was cold, final. And I'm making sure everyone knows it. She pulled out one more file, this one thicker than the others. This contains sworn statements from 17 witnesses who can place Olivia at various locations coordinating with the Volkovs over the last 4 years. Bank employees who processed her illegal transactions. Security guards who saw her meeting with Victor. Tech specialists who can prove her phone was used to trigger the accelerant that started the fire. Elena slid the file across the table to the prosecutor. She didn't just help the Volkovs commit crimes. She masterminded them. And she did it while making everyone believe I was the monster. The lead prosecutor looked at Olivia with something close to disgust. Ms. Voss, I'm hereby revoking your immunity agreement. You'll be taken into custody immediately on charges of murder, conspiracy, fraud, and perjury. No! Olivia lunged across the table at Elena, nails raking toward her face. You bitch! You've ruined everything! Security guards pulled her back, restraining her as she screamed and fought. Her perfect composure shattered completely, revealing the rage and hatred that had always lurked beneath. You were supposed to disappear, Olivia shrieked at Elena. You were supposed to go to prison or die or just fade away. But you kept fighting. You kept ruining my plans. Because I learned from the best, Elena said quietly. You taught me that survival means being ruthless, that power matters more than love, that the only person you can trust is yourself. She stood, gathering her things. So thank you, sister, for making me strong enough to destroy you. Olivia was still screaming as they dragged her away, her voice echoing down the courthouse hallways. Elena watched her go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief. Just emptiness where her family used to be. You did it. Catherine touched her arm gently. It's over. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because when Elena emerged from the courthouse, she found her father waiting on the steps. Richard Voss looked like he'd aged a decade in the last few weeks. His shoulders were bowed, his eyes red-rimmed, his expensive suit hanging off a frame that seemed to have shrunk. Elena. His voice cracked on her name. Can we talk? Please? She wanted to say no, wanted to walk past him like he didn't exist. But Marco's words echoed in her head, and she found herself nodding. They walked to a small park a block away, sitting on a bench under trees that were just beginning to bud with spring growth. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I watched the meeting through the prosecutor's live feed, Richard said finally. Watched you destroy your sister with the same precision I taught you to use in business negotiations. He laughed bitterly. I suppose I should be proud. You learned well. I learned survival. Nothing more. I'm sorry. The words seemed torn from him. I know that doesn't mean much now. I know I've lost any right to your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I am sorry, for all of it. Elena stared straight ahead, not trusting herself to look at him. Do you know what the worst part was? Not the forced marriage, not being framed for murder, not even losing 3 years of my life to hatred and exile. Her voice was steady, controlled. The worst part was realizing that you never actually loved me, that I was just a tool to you, a pawn to be moved around the board. That's not true, isn't it? Elena finally turned to face him. When Olivia told you I wasn't your biological daughter, did you even verify it? Did you get a DNA test? Or did you just accept it because it gave you an excuse to trade me away without guilt? Richard's silence was answer enough. I thought so. Elena stood, brushing off her skirt. For what it's worth, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying that anger around is exhausting. But I also never want to see you again. Whatever you built, whatever legacy you're trying to salvage, it dies with you. I want no part of it. Elena, wait! Richard grabbed her hand and Elena saw tears streaming down his face. Please. You're all I have left. Olivia's going to prison. The company is under investigation. My reputation is destroyed. You're my only daughter now. The only family I have. I stopped being your daughter the moment you sold me to save yourself. Elena pulled her hand free gently but firmly. Goodbye, Father. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for, but you won't find it with me. She walked away and didn't look back. By the time Elena returned to the estate, she was emotionally drained. The confrontation with Olivia, the conversation with her father, it had taken everything she had left. She wanted nothing more than to collapse into bed and sleep for a week. Instead, she found Adrian sitting up in bed in his private suite, looking significantly better than he had that morning, but still pale and bandaged. Marcus stood beside him, updating him on the day's events. You should be resting, Elena said from the doorway. Adrian's eyes lit up when he saw her. I've been resting all day. I'm going insane with boredom. He waved Marcus away. We'll finish this later. Marcus nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Elena crossed the room slowly, suddenly unsure of herself. Everything had changed in the last 24 hours. Adrian had nearly died. She'd destroyed her sister. Her father was out of her life forever. Where did that leave them? I heard about the meeting, Adrian said as she sat on the edge of his bed. Olivia's in custody. The prosecutors dropped her immunity deal. You did it, Elena. You won. It doesn't feel like winning. Elena's voice was small, tired. It feels like I burned down everything I used to be to become someone I don't recognize. Do you regret it? She thought about that. About the girl she'd been 3 years ago, soft and trusting and willing to sacrifice anything for love. About the woman she'd become, hard and strategic and capable of destroying anyone who threatened her. No, she said finally. I don't regret it, but I'm not sure I like who I am now either. Adrian reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. You're a survivor. You're strong and fierce, and you refuse to let anyone break you. That's who you are now. Is that enough? It's everything. Adrian pulled her closer, ignoring the pain the movement caused. Elena, when I thought I was dying, all I could think about was how much time we'd wasted. How many years we spent hating each other instead of... Don't. Elena pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't say things you'll regret when you're thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Adrian caught her hand, holding it against his chest. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm done pretending otherwise. The words should have filled her with joy, should have made her heart soar. Instead, they filled her with fear. You don't mean that. You're grateful I saved your life. You're emotional because you almost died. But when things settle down, when we're not in crisis mode anymore, you'll realize, I'll realize what? That I can't live without you? Adrian's grip tightened. Elena, I've spent 3 years trying to hate you, trying to convince myself that what we had wasn't real, and all it took was seeing you in danger to know the truth. I'm yours. Completely. Whether you want me or not. Elena felt tears burning her eyes. Adrian, we have a deal. When this is over, you let me go. You promised. I know what I promised. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. And if you still want to leave after everything's settled, I'll keep that promise. I'll give you your freedom, your divorce, whatever you need. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. But I'm asking you not to. I'm asking you to give us another chance. A real one this time, without the lies and manipulation and fear. I don't know if I can. Elena's voice broke. I don't know if I can trust that this is real, that you won't wake up one day and resent me for everything that happened. Then let me prove it to you. Adrian brought her hand to his lips, kissing each knuckle with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Give me time to show you that this isn't just crisis bonding or gratitude, that I mean every word. Elena wanted to say yes, wanted to let herself believe in happy endings and second chances. But she'd learned the hard way that fairy tales were just pretty lies people told themselves. Ask me again when you're healed, she said finally, when all of this is truly over and we're not running from one disaster to the next. Ask me then, and I'll give you my answer. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And for now, that would have to be enough. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange limbo between war and peace. Olivia was denied bail and remained in custody awaiting trial, her empire of lies crumbling around her as witness after witness came forward. Viktor Volkov accepted a plea deal that would keep him in prison for the rest of his life, rather than face a trial that would expose even more of his family's operations. Dmitry, true to his survival instincts, cooperated with authorities just enough to avoid prosecution himself, though his organization was gutted and his reputation destroyed. Richard Voss resigned from his own company, handing control to a board of directors who immediately began restructuring to distance themselves from the scandal. He sold his mansion and moved to a penthouse apartment across the city, becoming a ghost of the powerful man he'd once been. And through it all, Elena watched from the Moretti estate like a general surveying a battlefield after the smoke had cleared. She'd won, completely and utterly. Her enemies were destroyed, her name was cleared, and the truth was finally public knowledge. The media had moved on from calling her a murderer to painting her as a survivor, a woman who'd overcome impossible odds to reclaim her life. So why did victory taste like ash? You're brooding again, Natalie said from the doorway of the library where Elena had taken to spending her afternoons. That's the 3rd time this week I've found you staring out the window looking like someone died. Just thinking. Elena turned away from the view of the estate gardens, where spring was in full bloom. Have you finalized the paperwork for the foundation? Signed, sealed, and ready to file. Natalie crossed the room with a folder. The Moretti Family Justice Foundation will officially launch next month. Initial funding of $10 million, with a mission to help victims of violent crime navigate the legal system and rebuild their lives. She paused. It's a good thing you're doing, Elena. His mother would have loved it. Elena traced her fingers over the folder, thinking of the woman who'd treated her like a daughter for the brief time they'd known each other. It feels inadequate, like I'm trying to make up for their deaths with money. You're not trying to make up for anything. You're making sure their legacy is about more than tragedy. Natalie sat beside her. But that's not why you're brooding, is it? This is about Adrian. Of course it was about Adrian. He'd recovered faster than the doctors expected, his natural stubbornness refusing to let something as inconvenient as major surgery slow him down for long. Within 2 weeks, he was back to managing his organization, though he'd made significant changes. Several of his less legitimate operations had been quietly shut down or transferred to associates. He'd increased investment in legal businesses, distancing himself from the criminal empire his father had built. He was trying to become someone worthy of her. And it terrified Elena how much that meant. He asked me to dinner tonight, Elena said quietly. A real date. Not a strategy meeting or a legal consultation, just the two of us. And you're going to say no because you're an idiot who doesn't know how to accept happiness when it's offered. I'm going to say no because we're not ready. Elena closed the folder with more force than necessary. We barely know each other anymore, Nat. The people we were 3 years ago don't exist. And the people we've become, we've both done terrible things. Hurt each other in ways that can't just be forgotten. Nobody's asking you to forget, but maybe you could try forgiving. Natalie's voice was gentle. Elena, I've known you for 10 years. I've seen you in love and heartbroken and everything in between. And I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at Adrian. Even when you hated him, even when you were destroying each other, there was something there. That's exactly the problem. Elena stood, pacing to the window. What if that something isn't love? What if it's just trauma bonding? Two people who've been through hell together mistaking intensity for connection. Then you'll figure that out. But you won't know unless you try. Natalie joined her at the window. What are you really afraid of? Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching clouds drift across the sky. I'm afraid that if I let myself love him again, if I give him that power over me, I'll lose myself completely. I've worked so hard to become strong, to be someone who doesn't need anyone. And Adrian, he makes me want to be soft again, vulnerable. And I don't know if I can survive being that person anymore. Being soft doesn't make you weak, Elena. It makes you human. Natalie squeezed her shoulder. And for what it's worth, I think you've earned the right to be soft, to let someone else carry the weight for a while. After Natalie left, Elena sat alone with her thoughts and the setting sun. She knew what she should do. Should accept Adrian's invitation. Should give them a chance to rebuild what they'd lost. But knowing what she should do and having the courage to do it were two very different things. She was still wrestling with her decision when Marco burst into the library, laptop in hand and expression grim. We have a problem, he said without preamble. A big one. Elena's heart sank. Of course there was a problem. There was always a problem. What now? Someone's been digging into Adrian's financial records, deep digging, the kind that only federal investigators do. Marco pulled up files on his screen. They're building a RICO case, racketeering, money laundering, the works. And Elena, if they bring charges, it doesn't matter that he's been cleaning up his operations. They'll use everything from the last decade. How long do we have? Best guess? 2 months before indictments come down. Maybe less. Marco's expression was sympathetic. I'm sorry. I know this is the last thing you needed to hear. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Just when she thought they were finally free, when they could finally move forward, the past was reaching out to drag them back down. Does Adrian know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Marco hesitated. Elena, if he goes to trial, they're going to investigate everyone connected to him, including you. Your press conference, the evidence you gathered, the way you've been working with his organization, they could argue you're complicit. Let them argue. Elena's voice was hard. I haven't done anything illegal. You hacked Olivia's phone. You worked with someone you knew was a crime boss. I survived. Elena cut him off. And if that's a crime, then I guess I'm guilty. She found Adrian in his office, surrounded by paperwork and looking tired despite his recovery. He glanced up when she entered, and his expression immediately shifted from exhausted to concerned. What's wrong? Marco found something. Elena closed the door behind her and told him everything. About the investigation, the potential RICO charges, the timeline they were looking at. Adrian listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and moved to the window, staring out at the same gardens Elena had been contemplating earlier. I knew this was coming eventually, he said quietly. You can't run the kind of organization I inherited and expect to avoid federal attention forever. I've been preparing for this possibility for years. Preparing how? I have offshore accounts they don't know about. Properties in countries without extradition treaties. Contingency plans for everything from house arrest to life in prison. Adrian turned to face her. But there's one thing I didn't plan for. What's that? You. He crossed the room to stand in front of her. If I run, if I disappear to avoid prosecution, I lose you. But if I stay and fight, I risk dragging you down with me. So I need you to tell me what you want me to do. Elena stared at him, stunned. You're asking me to choose your future? I'm asking you to choose our future. Adrian took her hands, his grip warm and steady. Because that's what this is, Elena. A choice about whether we have a future together, or whether I disappear and let you build a life without this hanging over your head. That's not fair. You can't put that decision on me. Why not? Everything I've done for the last month has been trying to become someone worthy of you. Cleaning up my operations, investing in legitimate businesses, starting the foundation. All of it was about building a life we could share without you having to compromise who you are. His voice was rough with emotion. But if staying means you get caught in the crossfire of a federal investigation, then maybe the right thing to do is walk away. And spend the rest of your life in exile, looking over your shoulder, never coming home? Elena shook her head. That's not a life, Adrian. That's just a different kind of prison. Then what do you suggest? Elena thought about everything they'd been through. The lies and betrayals, the pain and the violence, the slow, painful process of learning to trust again. And she realized that she'd been so focused on protecting herself from hurt that she'd forgotten what it meant to actually fight for something. We fight, she said firmly. We get the best lawyers money can buy. We cooperate with investigators on everything that doesn't incriminate you. We show them that you're changing, that you're not the same person who built that empire. She stepped closer. And we do it together. No more running, no more hiding. We stand and face it. Elena, if this goes wrong, then it goes wrong. But at least we'll go down fighting. She cupped his face in her hands. I'm tired of being afraid, Adrian. Tired of protecting myself from pain by refusing to feel anything. Maybe Marco was right. Maybe I have changed into someone I don't recognize. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing, because the old Elena would never have had the courage to do this. Do what? Instead of answering, Elena pulled him down and kissed him. It wasn't like the brutal kiss at their wedding, all anger and possession and hurt. This was something different, tender and desperate and full of all the things they'd been too afraid to say. Adrian made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, careful of his healing injuries but unable to maintain any distance between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. Does this mean you're saying yes to dinner? He asked, voice rough. Elena laughed, surprising herself. It means I'm saying yes to trying, to seeing if what we have is real or just the aftermath of trauma. She pulled back slightly to meet his eyes. But Adrian, I need you to understand something. I'm not the girl you fell in love with 3 years ago. I can't be soft and trusting and willing to sacrifice everything for love anymore. That girl died in the fire, just as surely as your family did. I know. Adrian's thumb traced her cheekbone. And I'm not the man who let fear and hatred turn him into a monster. We're both different now. Harder, more careful with our trust. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can build something new from the pieces of who we used to be. And if we can't, then at least we'll know we tried. It wasn't a guarantee. Wasn't a happy ending wrapped up in a bow. But it was honest. And after everything they'd been through, honesty felt like the greatest gift they could give each other. The federal investigation moved forward with the inexorable weight of bureaucracy. Adrian hired a team of attorneys led by Catherine, who approached the case with the same ruthless efficiency she brought to everything. They cooperated where they could, stonewalled where they had to, and slowly built a defense that painted Adrian as a man trying to escape his father's legacy rather than perpetuate it. The foundation helped. The shuttered operations helped. And surprisingly, testimony from Detective Chen helped most of all. He'd been investigating the Volkov family for years and was willing to state under oath that Adrian had provided crucial information that led to their takedown. It's not perfect, Catherine told them during a strategy meeting 6 weeks after the investigation became public. They still have evidence of money laundering from 3 years ago. Wire fraud. Conspiracy charges related to operations your father ran. But with the cooperation you've provided and the changes you've made, I think we can negotiate a plea deal that doesn't involve prison time. What kind of deal? Elena asked from her position beside Adrian. Probation, heavy fines, possibly house arrest, and full cooperation with ongoing investigations into other criminal organizations. Catherine looked at Adrian. You'd essentially be helping the feds dismantle the entire structure your family built. Every connection, every operation, every dirty secret. Are you willing to do that? Adrian didn't hesitate. Yes, The relief Elena felt was almost overwhelming. Not prison, not exile, just consequences they could actually survive. There's one more thing, Catherine continued. They want Elena's testimony about the Volkov conspiracy and Olivia's crimes. Her cooperation could strengthen the case against everyone involved and show that you've both been working to expose corruption rather than perpetuate it. I'll do it, Elena said immediately. Over the next 2 months, Elena gave deposition after deposition, testimony that helped prosecutors build cases against not just Olivia and the Volkovs, but a dozen other criminals who'd been operating in the city's shadows. It was exhausting, draining, forcing her to relive the worst moments of the last 3 years over and over. But Adrian was there for every session, waiting outside with coffee and quiet support. And gradually, Elena began to understand that this was what partnership looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but showing up for the hard, boring, painful parts, and refusing to let the other person face them alone. Olivia's trial came first, and it was exactly as brutal as Elena expected. Her stepsister's defense team tried everything, claiming the evidence was fabricated, that Elena was seeking revenge, that Olivia had been manipulated by the Volkovs into actions she never would have taken on her own. But the evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was damning. And when the jury returned after just 4 hours of deliberation, with guilty verdicts on all counts, Elena felt something finally let go in her chest. Olivia was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led away, she turned to look at Elena one last time. "I hope it was worth it," she said, voice empty of everything except exhaustion. "Destroying me. Was it worth becoming just like me?" Elena met her stepsister's eyes and answered honestly. "I don't know yet. Ask me in 10 years. Viktor Volkov's sentencing came a week later. Life in prison. Dmitry avoided prosecution but lost everything else. His organization, his reputation, his sons. He died 6 months later of a heart attack, alone in a nursing home, and Elena felt nothing when she heard the news. Adrian's plea deal was finalized in early autumn. 5 years probation, 10 million in fines, and complete cooperation with federal investigations. No jail time, no ankle monitor. Just regular check-ins with a probation officer and the knowledge that one misstep would send him to prison. It felt like a victory, even though it meant dismantling everything his family had built. The Moretti estate was sold to pay the fines and settle lawsuits from the families of those who had died in the fire 3 years ago. Adrian and Elena moved to a penthouse in the city, something smaller and cleaner, and not weighed down by history. Marco moved into a place nearby, finishing his degree online while helping Elena establish the foundation. Natalie took a position as the foundation's chief technology officer, building databases and security systems to protect the victims they served. Catherine joined their board of directors, lending her expertise to navigate the legal complexities of their work. And slowly, carefully, Elena and Adrian built something new. It wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes, old wounds resurfacing when stress ran high. There were days when Elena wondered if they were making a mistake. Days when the weight of everything they'd been through felt too heavy to carry. But there were also mornings when she woke up beside Adrian and felt something like peace. Afternoons spent working on the foundation together, helping people who'd been where they were. Evenings talking about the future instead of being trapped in the past. On their first anniversary, 1 year since that horrible wedding that had started everything, Adrian took Elena to the beach house where they'd spent their first summer together, back when they were young and in love and everything seemed possible. "I can't believe you still own this place," Elena said, stepping onto the deck that overlooked the ocean. "I thought you would have sold it years ago." "I tried." Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Multiple times, but I could never go through with it. Too many memories." "Good memories or bad?" "Both." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "The summer we spent here was the happiest of my life. But after the fire, coming here just reminded me of everything I'd lost, including you." Elena leaned back against him, watching waves crash against the shore. "We've been through so much to get back to this point. Sometimes I still can't believe we made it." "Do you regret it? Staying, fighting for us instead of taking the clean break I offered?" Elena turned in his arms to face him. "There are things I regret. Ways I handled situations. Things I said in anger that I can't take back. But staying, fighting for us, That's not one of them. Even though we're not the people we were when we first fell in love, especially because we're not those people anymore. Elena cupped his face, thumbs brushing across his cheekbones. The old us wouldn't have survived what we've been through. We would have broken under the weight of it. But the people we've become, we're strong enough to carry it together. Adrian pulled a small box from his pocket, and Elena's breath caught. I know we're already married, he said, opening it to reveal a simple platinum band etched with delicate flowers. But that wedding was built on lies and coercion and hatred. So I'm asking you again, for real this time. He took her hand. Elena Voss, will you marry me? Not because you're forced to, not to save anyone, or gain advantage, or survive a war, just because you want to build a life with me. Tears burned Elena's eyes, but this time they were the good kind. The kind that came from joy instead of pain. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger beside the wedding band she'd never taken off, and then he kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache in the best possible way. They were married again 6 weeks later in a small ceremony on that same beach, with just Marco, Natalie, Catherine, and Marcus in attendance. No press, no society guests, no elaborate production, just two people choosing each other in front of the ocean and the sunset and the few people who'd helped them survive. Elena wore a simple white dress that caught the ocean breeze, her hair loose around her shoulders. Adrian wore a dark suit with no tie, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. When the officiant asked if they took each other to love and cherish, they both said yes without hesitation. And when Adrian kissed his bride, it tasted like promises and second chances and all the tomorrows they'd fought so hard to have. The reception was lobster and champagne on the beach, laughter and stories, and the easy warmth of people who'd been through hell together and come out the other side. As the sun set and stars began to appear overhead, Elena found herself watching the people she loved most and feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, coming up beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. How different this is from the first wedding. Elena accepted the glass, clinking it against his. How much better. Because we chose it this time. Because we chose each other. She took a sip of champagne, then set the glass aside. Adrian, there's something I need to tell you. His expression immediately shifted to concern. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. At least, I don't think so. Elena took his hands, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been even during the ceremony. I'm pregnant. Adrian went very still. You're what? Pregnant, about 8 weeks. I found out last week, but I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you. She searched his face anxiously. I know we haven't talked about children. I know the timing might not be ideal with everything else going on, but I'm keeping it, and I hope... Adrian cut her off with a kiss that tasted like joy and tears and laughter all mixed together. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with emotion. You hope what? That I'm happy? Elena, I'm terrified and thrilled and completely unprepared, but yes, I'm happy. So happy I can barely breathe. Elena felt relief flood through her. Good, because I'm terrified too. I have no idea how to be a mother. My own family was such a disaster, and with everything we've been through, we'll figure it out together. Adrian's hands moved to her still flat stomach with a reverence that made her chest ache. We'll make mistakes, and we'll struggle, and we'll probably mess up in ways we can't even imagine. But we'll love this child, we'll protect them, and we'll make sure they grow up knowing they were wanted, knowing they were loved, Elena added softly. That too. They stood there on the beach as the party continued around them, 2 people who'd been through hell and somehow found their way back to each other. They weren't the same people who'd fallen in love 3 years ago. They were harder, more scarred, more aware of how quickly everything could fall apart. But they were also stronger, more honest, more willing to fight for what mattered. And what mattered was this: the life they were building together, the family they were creating, the foundation that helped others find justice when the system failed them. 6 months later, Elena stood in the foundation's new headquarters, cutting the ribbon on a facility that would provide legal aid, counseling, and support to victims of violent crime. The turnout was overwhelming: local politicians, community leaders, former clients whose lives they'd helped rebuild. But the person Elena was most aware of was Adrian, standing at the back of the room with his hand resting protectively on her now visible baby bump. He caught her eye and smiled, and Elena felt her heart swell with an emotion that would have terrified her a year ago. Love. Pure and uncomplicated, and strong enough to survive anything. In her speech, Elena talked about how the foundation had grown from tragedy, how 3 people who'd lost their lives to senseless violence had inspired something that would help thousands. She talked about justice and healing and the importance of second chances. But mostly, she talked about hope. There was a time when I thought my life was over, she told the assembled crowd. When I believed that the pain and betrayal I'd experienced had broken something fundamental in me. And in some ways, it did. The person I was before died in that fire just as surely as the people I loved. But from those ashes, something new was born. Something stronger. And this foundation is proof that beauty can come from tragedy if we're willing to fight for it. She caught sight of Natalie in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Marco beside her, looking proud enough to burst. Catherine nodding in approval. And in the back, Adrian watching her like she was the most important thing in his world. We can't undo the past, Elena continued. We can't bring back the people we've lost or erase the pain we've endured. But we can choose what we build from the rubble. We can choose to let our scars make us stronger instead of bitter. And we can choose to help others find their way through the darkness, the way others helped us. The applause when she finished was thunderous. People lined up to congratulate her, to share their own stories, to thank her for creating something that mattered. And through it all, Elena kept glancing back at Adrian, drawing strength from his presence. When the event finally ended and they were alone in the car heading home, Elena let herself relax for the first time in hours. You were magnificent, Adrian said, reaching for her hand. My mother would have loved what you said about her. I meant every word. Elena laced their fingers together. She was the first person who made me feel like I belonged somewhere, like I was part of a real family. And now you're starting a family of your own. Adrian's free hand moved to her stomach, where their daughter was growing. They'd found out the gender last week, and neither of them could stop talking about it. Our family? Elena corrected. We're in this together, remember? How could I forget? You remind me approximately 12 times a day. Elena laughed, the sound coming easier now than it had in years. That's because you have a tendency to take everything on yourself. I need to make sure you remember you have backup. I remember. Adrian brought her hand to his lips. Elena, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? Really happy? Not just content or making the best of things, but actually happy? Elena thought about the question seriously. Thought about everything they'd lost and everything they'd gained. The scars that would never fully heal and the love that had grown stronger because of them. Yes, she said finally. I'm happy. Not in the way I imagined when I was young and naive and thought happiness meant perfect, but in a real way, a earned way. The kind of happiness that comes from surviving something terrible and choosing to build something beautiful anyway. That's all I needed to hear. Their daughter was born on a spring morning, arriving 3 weeks early, and with enough lung power to wake the entire hospital floor. They named her Sophia Marie Moretti, after Adrian's mother and Elena's own middle name. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's stubborn determination, making her opinions known from day one. Holding her daughter for the first time, Elena felt something shift in her chest. All the fear and pain and trauma of the last few years faded into background noise. Because this tiny, perfect human was the future, proof that they could create something good from all the destruction. She's beautiful, Adrian whispered, carefully touching Sophia's tiny hand with one finger. She looks like you. She looks like herself. Elena couldn't take her eyes off her daughter's face. She's her own person, and we're going to make sure she grows up knowing she can be whoever she wants to be. Strong like her mother, kind like her father. I'm not, Adrian started. You are. Elena looked up at him. You're the man who risked his life to save me, who changed his entire organization to build a better future, who's been nothing but patient and supportive through every panic attack and nightmare and moment of doubt I've had. That's kindness, Adrian, real kindness, the kind that matters. Sophia made a small sound and they both turned their attention back to her. She was perfect, absolutely perfect, and terrifying in the way that all new life was terrifying, because she represented everything they could lose, but also everything they'd gained. Marco visited that afternoon, bringing flowers and looking uncomfortable in the way only a 24-year-old bachelor could in a maternity ward. "She's so small," he said, staring at his niece with something close to awe. "How is something that small even possible?" "Wait until you hold her," Elena said, carefully transferring Sophia to her brother's arms. "Then she feels even smaller." Marco settled into the chair beside the bed, cradling his niece with exaggerated care. "Hey there, Sophia. I'm your Uncle Marco. I'm going to teach you all the things your parents won't approve of, like how to hack computer systems and pick locks." "You absolutely are not," Elena said, but she was smiling. "Okay, fine. I'll wait until she's at least 5. Marco grinned down at Sophia. "But I will teach her how to protect herself, how to be strong and smart and never let anyone make her feel less than she is." "That," Adrian said quietly, "I absolutely approve of." Natalie arrived later with Catherine, both of them cooing over the baby and bringing enough gifts to stock a small toy store. They stayed for an hour, filling the room with laughter and warmth and the easy comfort of people who'd become family. Not through blood, but through choice. After they left and Sophia was sleeping in her bassinet, Elena lay in the hospital bed with Adrian curled up beside her in the small space, both of them watching their daughter breathe. "Do you remember what you asked me the day after our first wedding?" Elena said quietly. "About whether I thought we could have a future together? I remember you said maybe. I'm changing my answer." Elena turned to look at him. "This is our future, right here, this moment, this life we're building. And it's better than anything I could have imagined when I was standing at that altar feeling like my world was ending." "Because it was ending," Adrian said. "The old world, the one built on lies and betrayal and fear. That world had to end so this one could begin." "Do you think it's really over? All of it? Or is this just the calm before another storm?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I think there will always be challenges, always be threats. But we're different now, stronger. And we have something worth protecting." He nodded toward Sophia. "So whatever comes, we'll face it together." "Together," Elena echoed. It became their promise, their anchor. The thing they held on to when the nightmares came, or when doubt crept in, or when the weight of everything they'd been through threatened to pull them under. Together. 3 years after that second wedding on the beach, Elena stood at the window of their penthouse watching the sun rise over the city. Sophia was asleep in the nursery, 3 years old now, and already showing signs of the fierce independence she'd inherited from both parents. Adrian was in the kitchen making coffee, a morning ritual he'd taken over when Elena admitted she still couldn't get the proportions right. The foundation had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. They'd helped over 5,000 victims of violent crime navigate the legal system, provided housing and counseling to hundreds more, and successfully lobbied for legislative changes that made it easier for victims to access justice. Olivia was still in prison and would be for the rest of her life. Richard Voss had died 6 months ago, leaving everything to charity rather than to either of his daughters. Elena had attended the funeral, but felt nothing, the man buried there a stranger who'd worn her father's face. The Volkov Empire was a memory, its remains absorbed by other organizations or legitimized through careful restructuring. Victor would die in prison. Dmitri was already dead. And the city they'd terrorized for decades had slowly begun to heal. As for Elena and Adrian, they'd found something precious in the ruins of their old lives. Not the innocent love of their youth, but something deeper and more resilient. A partnership built on honesty and trust, and the hard-won knowledge that they were stronger together than they'd ever been apart. "Coffee's ready?" Adrian called from the kitchen. Elena turned from his window to find him standing there with 2 mugs, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, hair still messy from sleep. He looked nothing like the polished crime boss he'd once been, and everything like the man she'd chosen to build a life with. "What were you thinking about?" he asked, handing her a cup. "How far we've come. How different everything is from what I imagined." Elena took a sip, savoring the warmth. "Do you ever regret it? Giving up the empire? The power?" "Not even for a second." Adrian set his cup down and pulled her into his arms. "I traded an empire for a family, power for peace, fear for love. That's not a sacrifice. That's an upgrade. Even with the probation and the check-ins and the constant monitoring? Even with all of that, he pressed a kiss to her forehead. Because at the end of the day, I get to come home to you and Sophia. I get to work on something meaningful instead of managing criminal operations. I get to sleep without wondering if tomorrow's the day everything collapses. From the nursery, they heard Sophia starting to wake up, making the soft sounds that would soon escalate to demands for breakfast and attention. I'll get her, Adrian said, but Elena caught his arm. Wait, before the day starts and everything gets crazy, I need to tell you something. Adrian's expression shifted to concern. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Elena smiled, reaching for his hand and placing it on her stomach. But you might want to start thinking about names. Plural. It took him a moment to understand. We're twins? Twins? Elena confirmed. I found out yesterday. Wanted to tell you when we had a quiet moment, but those are rare these days. Adrian's face went through about 12 different expressions before settling on joy mixed with terror. Twins. 3 kids under 5. We're insane. Completely, Elena laughed. But we're insane together, which somehow makes it better. Together, Adrian agreed and kissed her just as Sophia's calls from the nursery became impossible to ignore. They went to get their daughter together, starting another day in the life they'd built from ashes and anger and the stubborn refusal to let their story end in tragedy. And if Elena sometimes woke from nightmares about the fire, if Adrian occasionally flinched at loud noises that reminded him of explosions, if they both carried scars that would never fully fade, well, that was just part of who they were now. Survivors, partners, parents, 2 people who'd been chained together by hate and chose to stay bound by love. And in the end, that choice made all the difference.